Thank you, Father Todd. I just want to let you all know that I'm very happy to see everybody. Welcome, welcome to our new, I'm not going to say office, our new home. I really like this space. I love this space. And we've been working very hard. I don't think I introduced myself. I'm Bernadine. They call me Miss Byrne. I'm an organizer. I'm a missionary, and I'm also a, a affordable housing commissioner. Sometimes you have so many hats, you don't know which one to put on, or do you put all of them on at one time? The purpose of this event is to let you know what we've been doing for like the last 3 years. We had a pandemic, COVID. COVID caused a lot of us to die, and a lot of us worked endless nights, endless hours trying to help people. People with human needs, just groceries and cleaning products and toothpaste, mouthwash, soap. We did this for 3 years with United Workers. And we met a lot of people. Just the response to people calling us, asking us, could they help us with the rent? They wanted us to help them with the rent and their mortgages, utilities, and we were able to get them representation with lawyers that they could talk to and figure out this problem. I'm very happy that it seems like the people that we helped during that time, a lot of them are here. And that just makes me feel real good. You don't have to stand up or raise your hand. We just gonna keep on going. I want y'all to know it's the first time I've ever done this, so bear with me here. Okay. So moving straight ahead. We've been doing a lot of thinking during this pandemic. This last year, we called the year of reconnaissance. We did a lot of rest, regroup, and planning during this last year. Plans for next year that will go into progress. So I have somebody here that's going to tell you a little bit about how we got started, how long we've started, 20 years. And I just want to give you a little briefing on the different things that's going to take place. From 6:15 to 6:45, Mike is going to tell you about the last 20 years. From 6:45 to 7:15, the Poor People's Campaign will be represented, and Ash will tell you how that happened. At 7:15 to 7:20, we're going to have a little music break. From 7:20 to 7:50, we're going to break down into 2 groups. So, Mike, come.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. Yeah, give it up, Ms. Burns. So as Ms. Burns, she's not used to coming up and speaking in front of a crowd, so I think she did a tremendous job just conquering that fear. We know stage fright is a real thing, but she did it. And this is some of the things that United Workers like to do. We develop our leaders in this way. Every event, every action, every campaign is a school, and we treat it as such. So it's always something that we can learn. It's always something that our members can learn, and there's also things that we can teach. So yeah, so next slide, please. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the United Workers and whom we are. We are a human rights organization led by those most impacted by poverty, right? Everyone in this room has a sense that poverty has been a deep problem, right? And have been for a very long time. So you see here on the screen, some leaders. Can we identify these leaders? Do we know who this is on the end? And I know we know who this is in the middle. Okay, that's my aunt. No, I'm just kidding, but I mean, maybe, right? And this guy here, these are the shoulders that we stand on, right? These are leaders. They risk a lot. Well, in every example, they risk their actual lives to lead people through a system that was really wrong, right? And tearing people down. So United Workers following in these footsteps, and we see everybody as having the potential to be like them. Next slide, please. So yeah, as I said earlier, we are an organization led by the poor, right? The poor know what the needs are. We know what our situations are, right? And it's up to us to change the conditions that we live in. We can't sit back and wait for anyone to come and rescue us. We won't get any bailouts. We know where the bailouts go, right? It don't come to us, right? So we organize to develop the power necessary to make the changes that we need to see. So we are politically independent. We are not a Democrat organization. We are not a Republican or any other party. We are completely independent, and we try to be so financially as well. So we're working toward that. And we'll get to that a little bit later. So yeah, we organize across all barriers: age, race, sex, religion, right? A lot of times, those are mechanisms of division. They're used to keep us divided. You'll have the elders against the young people, and the young people say the elders don't understand, and we organize across all of that, right? We focus on leadership development. That is very important. We don't organize just to build membership for the sake of saying we got X amount of members. We actually develop our leaders to understand, to be competent, motivated to continue this move. The fight that we are working on is not new, and the issues that we face is not going away anytime soon. So developing ourselves to be the Martin Luther Kings, the Frederick Douglasses is necessary. And again, every campaign that we run as if it's a school. We see it as just that, a school. Next slide. Thank you. So how we do this? Just mention it by making every struggle, campaign, meeting a school. Sometimes we push each other out of our comfort zones because that's what's necessary for growth, right? So we do this through like base building. We go out and we canvas. We knock doors. We meet people where they are. We go to pantries and meet people there. People go there to meet their needs, right? But once that need is met for that moment, what about next week? Right? They still got the same problem. So we use that as an opportunity to actually invite people into the process of learning and being part of this movement. So we use projects of survival. One example of that is our Hope Garden in Harlem Park. We did a survey back in 2016, about 16.
Yeah.
And one of the issues that came up was lack of access to healthy and affordable food, right? So the idea of creating a garden that can help kind of offset that cost a little bit and provide a space to invite people into this process, right? So people didn't just come to get a couple peppers. They came to be part of a process to change this whole narrative. Again, we focus on leadership development. We also do media Storytelling, you may notice people walking around with cameras. It's part of our media team. We understand that those in power control mass media. And most of the time, they do not tell our story in a way that's respectful or truthful. Right? They have their way of putting their spin on what really happened. So it's important for us to have our own internal media process. It also is good to be able to share your story. You know, there's a certain therapy connected with that. I know for me, it definitely is. I like sitting and talking to people and hearing people's story and also sharing my own, you know, and we know movements are built on through storytelling. Everybody in this room and everywhere has their own story, right? Sharing that story helps us learn and it helps build us up. And it's a way to make the invisible visible, right? We all know we are dealing with something. What it is, we don't know until we share those stories. So next slide, please. So we come from a very long history of organizing. The National Welfare Rights Organization. Do we remember that? So people had to organize and fight to get the basic resources they needed to cover their basic needs, right? That was way back in the 60s and 70s, right? Then there was the National Union of the Homeless, right? Where they organized, once again, themselves to address the issue of homelessness. In this picture here, they're cutting a lock off in a vacant building so that they can house homeless people, right? And we see how many vacant buildings have we passed on the way here, right? And this is not a problem that's just here in Baltimore. We see this across our nation. Todd and I just came from Alabama, where they were living in the same conditions with the same issues, right? So we know that it's not any particular city in this country's problem. This problem is huge, right? So the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, again, people organizing themselves to address the issue of poverty that they was living in. There's this stigma, there's this thought that some people have that poor people cannot organize themselves. Well, we've been doing it for a while. We have some victories to speak of, right? So we have been, and we will continue to organize. The Poor People's Campaign, a national call for more revival. You guys remember the march down in DC, right?
Yeah.
March 18th,
Hey.
right? So this was the revival or the rebirth or the continuation even of the Poor People's Campaign, the campaign that Martin Luther King was leading at the time of his death, right? So we have been, we come from these struggles. And we will continue to organize and fight. Next slide, please. Oh, Mondo. So, next slide. So, United Workers was born, or it was founded, in a abandoned firehouse turned homeless shelter. Again, a vacant building that was converted into a shelter. And this happened back in 2002, right? There was conversations had at this shelter around, or I should say questions were raised by the people that lived in the shelter. Because though this was a homeless shelter, the people that lived there actually worked. They had jobs. They got up in the morning and went to work. but still didn't have enough to cover their bills. And so they found themselves homeless, right? This is something that I can attest to personally. I remember being homeless, and not being able to cover my bills despite being employed and working. Just wasn't making enough to make ends meet, right? So it took 2 years. If you notice the dates from 2002 to 2004, there's a gap there. This is the period where we studied. We studied and reflected before we acted. In every campaign we do, we study, we reflect, we act, repeat, right? So the first campaign was launched in 2004, and that was the campaign for living wages at Camden Yards. There's leaders in this room right now that came out of that campaign. They see and understand that in order, like, first of all, we're not going to win what we seek to win anytime soon. This is a long haul fight that we are embarking on, right? So in 2004, we focus on Camden Yards. This is the home of the Oreos. Y'all give it up for the Oreos. Yeah. Give it up for them O's. But the stadium is owned by the state, right? By the stadium authority. And it wasn't paying living wages. So we were able to organize, push the state on this. And that, do y'all know who owns the Oreos? One of the wealthiest men in Maryland, Peter Angelos, right? So in the beginning, we were told, you're not going to be able to beat this guy. This guy he got lawyers on deck. His lawyers got lawyers on standby, right? He himself owns a law firm. We weren't going to be able to beat him. This is some of the things that we were hearing from people. However, it was the right thing to do, so we was able to organize people and push this fight and become victorious. In the end, we did win a living wage. Next slide, please. So we're going to show a quick video about that campaign, and then I'm going to talk to you guys some more.
We're not making enough money to do anything, okay? I mean, you get a check once every 2 or 3 weeks, and sometimes it's for a day, sometimes for 2 days, and that's not enough money even to go buy groceries, okay? Besides the fact that we don't get a lunch break, we don't get any kind of break, actually. We have to work from the time we get here until the time we finish doing.
And I guarantee you that if you looked at all the history books in any of the libraries, you would never find where a dumb force rose up and defeated a smart force. That's right. Never. That if we're gonna outfight what we're up against, we gotta outsmart them. Right. That means we gotta do what you guys are doing right now in terms of educating each other, learning from each other, speaking to what lessons you've learned, your conclusions, exchanging it, and developing our capacity to think and outsmart what we're up against.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let, keep on walking.
and we fought for that, right? So as I said, oh man, these are all my friends from back then. It's funny looking at that. Yeah, next slide. Next slide. So I should share also that this is the period where I came into the organization. I came in 2008. So just as this campaign was wrapping up, right, we was trying to secure that victory. We knew the moment we left, the stadium was going to revert back to their old ways, you know, because this is what they do. You know, they will give you a temporary concession. They'll give you a temporary victory and then kind of wait you out and then go back to their old ways. So we organized to have a union come in and represent the workers there. You know, I ended up being one of the shop stewards at that time. And that was tricky. The threats from management, okay, you know, all those threats, the campaign that they was launching against us, you know, trying to convince us, hey, you know what, if you get a union, you're gonna have to pay dues, they're gonna take all your money, right? At that time, we was paying the least dues of anybody in the state, right? But we gonna watch this video. That's Miss Valerie. Yeah, let's watch the video.
A victory tonight at Camden Yards, but we're not talking about the Orioles. Stadium workers threatened a hunger strike if they didn't get more money, but the stadium authority saved the day. Karen Parks joins us now live from Camden Yards with the latest.
Joy, as you can imagine, it's not easy cleaning up Camden Yards after a game, and getting paid a few dollars only makes it worse. Now, a new living wage law goes into effect October 1st, but stadium workers aren't affected by it, and they aren't covered by it, rather, and they say it's time for them to get paid. Inside the Light Street Presbyterian Church, songs of victory.
I've been a day laborer for about a year.
I keep the bathroom clean, the floors, bullpen, whatever needs to be done, I do.
It's hard labor, picking up trash. It's simple work, but it's very hard work to do.
Camden Yard workers no longer forced to live on pennies.
And at $7 an hour, I was struggling.
For more than 3 years, these workers have fought for a pay increase.
And if the fans can understand what a good job we're doing, why can't Camden Yard?
More than 100 workers making $7 an hour. But at the end of the day, it's even less than that.
Van fees is $3 to get there and $3 to come back. They would take out for like hard hats and gloves and boots.
I'm thinking this is small compared to the other finances.
So today, the Maryland Stadium Authority
Just raise your hand.
voted on a living wage for Camden Yard workers for $11.30 an hour.
Now that the living wage is secure, we cut these bands off to show that we are victorious.
Thank you, Jesus.
And I can accomplish anything, and that's what we did.
Workers now would be able to live comfortably and not fall into poverty.
New wages go into effect next fall. Reporting live here at Camden Yards, Karen Parks, Fox 45 News at 10.
So the bands that was referenced here was worn by everybody that was prepared to do the hunger strike. You know, it was a sign of solidarity and commitment. You know, so once that campaign was won, we got that victory, you know, people was able to come out of that bang. But a lot of those same people stayed around for years afterwards. So yeah.
A victory tonight at Camden Yards, but we're not.
But just so you guys know, the conditions there was crazy. The conditions there was like, I remember having to eat our lunch in the bathrooms. You know, they would say, oh, you only got a half hour to eat lunch, but it took you 10 minutes to get downstairs just to get to your lunch. So that eats into that. You know, I can go down less. It was kind of crazy though. Just trust me on that. It was wild. So right after that campaign, again, we got the union to come in and represent. That was a whole campaign in itself. But then we went to the Inner Harbor and launched the Human Rights Zone campaign. Understanding that the issues that people was facing at the stadium was not restricted to the stadium. These are some of the things that people was facing across the board. When we talk about poverty wages, a lot of people was dealing with poverty wages. Right, so at the Inner Harbor, the beautiful and illustrious Inner Harbor, the crown jewel of Baltimore, right, which was funded by public money. So they used public money to build it, but who really benefited from it? They promised jobs, but we was only able to get what kind of jobs? Poverty wage jobs. People could not live off of those wages. You got a service dependent on tips, right? You can have a good week and a bad week. Bottom line is, it wasn't enough to cover the bills. So we organized around work with dignity, education issues, housing issues, right? These are some of the things that we were learning that people were dealing with as we did this campaign. Next slide, please. So one of the places that was harbor was the ESPN zone, right? ESPN zone had decided to close their restaurant. And I think they closed all the restaurants around the country, right? And not tell their workers. So imagine coming to work one day and the doors are locked. Can you imagine what that would be like? That's like insane to even think about. But that's what was happening here. We got wind of it and we was able to organize the workers there. So we're gonna play this video of Winston. He was one of the leaders for that campaign.
I went in to work on the, must have been the 8th of June. I get there early in the morning and there's a chef on the back dock and the first thing he says is, can I speak to you for a moment? And he said, they're gonna be closing down in a week. I just couldn't believe that this was going to happen. It's almost like somebody comes up and robs you at gunpoint. And takes everything from you. We were dedicated, I was anyway, dedicated to my job, to my position with Disney. Unfortunately, they weren't that dedicated to their employees. You know, I've always worked, but today, you know, it's been since June and this is February, almost March. I haven't worked since. You want to get back to work, you know you're good for something, you know you're better than what you are, what the position that you're in, but you really can't do anything about it. Yeah, I have to sit on my hands every day, and in order to keep myself from going crazy, I just sit there and I weep until I start to feel better, and then I get myself together and I go on out and meet the school bus, get my daughter off of the school bus, and that reminds me that my day is a little better. If you know somebody that works down at the Inner Harbor, you can ask them. Conditions down there aren't lovely. Conditions down there aren't what the developers would want to portray it to be. People are getting treated like they're dispensable. or disposable. So there is a struggle, and there's always going to be the need for more fighters in the struggle. So I'm calling on anybody that's willing and able to fight.
So we actually did a whole report about this campaign and what was really going on at that time. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight. Yeah. But yeah, Winston, because of what happened here, had to leave the city. He had to move away to stay with relatives because he couldn't cover his bills, right? And we see this very often. We see people staying with relatives, sleeping on the couches, sleeping in the basements, and having to shack up because of the cost of living being too high and the wages being too low. In fact, so from there, we moved on to the fight for fair development. In 2012, oh, this is great. Great. This is going to tell it all. Oh, wait.
Sorry, we're dealing with some technical. Every time.
So
we try
anyway,
to get out of the
that's
video.
fine. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna watch a video of another person that came out of that campaign, out of the In the Harbor campaign. That is there it is. That's my brother Emmanuel. Not my husband. Like he didn't come from the same mom. But it's my brother in the struggle. He came from ESPN zone and he was dealing with a lot of health issues. And we're gonna hear about it in this video.
Healthcare is definitely needed. From my personal experience, I come from a wide range background. I have a degree, BS Political Science. I serve in the military. I get a little benefit from them fighting for more out of, from the veterans. And Veteran Affairs don't even help those people who get hurt in the military. Presently, my full-time job, I just recently lost that. I used to work for the largest employer as an hourly manager at Walmart. As an hourly manager, it's the largest employer in the world, almost retail in the world. Living off $10.50, I still had to work another job. I still had to do other forms of make income as a DJ or other events and stuff. And I'm living since 2011 with a disease called Hodgkin lymphoma cancer. It's a 74% chance to live off it because I'm young, but it's real. And going through it, and my current job, they didn't accommodate my disability, which is why I lost it. For every time I make a mistake, I get written up. And it's really sad and all that, but I'm here now and all that to speak my voice. The Obamacare, it helps with the options that they have, but it still has a lot of loopholes, which Sergio just speaking of and all that. I just want everybody to stay encouraged or let's spread the word. We need health care. Cancer and all that, that's the last thing I should be thinking of and all. I'm only 34 years old. And that's pretty much what I had to say and all, because other people need to speak. And I hope everybody stay encouraged and we get some things changed here, starting here with Maryland and abroad.
This is kind of heavy because Emmanuel lost his fight and passed away. So as I said, this is somebody that we cared very deeply for, somebody that we really respected, and someone who was committed to this movement. That was recorded several years after the campaign at ESPN Zone, right? So he had nothing to gain personally from that other than changing a system that was killing us. He was dedicated and he was committed until all the way up until the time of his death. Rest in peace, Emmanuel. And we've seen this several times over. There's Veronica, Miss Dorothy, several of our leaders. that stick and stay through the campaigns, whatever it was that got them into the organization, they committed, they stayed, and they organized. It's something to be said about a system that allows this to happen over and over. We lived through a pandemic where a lot of people died, and guess what? A lot of those people were people who was living in poverty. People living in poverty was affected the most from this pandemic. They were the ones that was dying because they didn't have health care. They didn't have access to health facilities, or we know with the pandemic itself, medications were something that they didn't have vaccines in the beginning. But even when they were, we were the last to get them. So you see, United Work is organized around human rights values. Healthcare, right, is one of those values. Like everyone should have health care and access to affordable health care. So in 2016, our beloved city decided it was going to allow the nation's largest incinerator to be built here in Baltimore, right? Less than 1 mile from a public school, right? We know there's a problem. We know there's a problem. A lot of people in this very room is dealing with breathing issues, respiratory issues. And a lot of that is because of the incinerator that we currently have. That smokestack that we see coming off of 295 or getting on the 295, the Bresco incinerator, that's been poisoning the people of this city for a very long time. So we fought against that. We was able to push the mayor, not the current idiot, I'm sorry, not the current mayor. But we was able to push the mayor to actually not renew the contract for that incinerator. That was a big deal. That was a big fight. But unfortunately, the current mayor, right, actually resented that and signed a contract for 10 years. So we were forced to deal with that incinerator for another 10 years. So again, the struggle doesn't stop. The fight does not stop. We may win concessions here and there, but that doesn't mean that the war is over. We got a lot of work to do. Thank you. So our 2020 campaign was also started in 2016, where we focused on permanently affordable housing. We have a lot of, and I said this earlier, we got a lot of vacants around, right? That's a lot of people that can be housed. Instead, we're housing trees. We got trees growing out of our houses. It's insane, right? But so we was able to secure affordable housing trust fund. To do that, we had to get out in the streets. We pushed the city, we shared our plan with them. They said, oh yeah, it's a good idea. Great idea. But they wouldn't implement it. They wouldn't do it. So we took the issue to the people. We went out on the streets and we did petitions. We organized our people, to get out there with a clipboard and talk to people about these issues, and got over 18,000 signatures. 18,000 signatures, and it was over that. I just don't remember the exact number, but I know it was over 18,000. And then once we had the trust fund established, the city still didn't want to put money in. So we had a bank account with no money, right? So we went back to the streets, and this time got over 20,000 signatures. As a matter of fact, where's my brother Terrell? Terrell came through during that campaign. This is when he was introduced to United Workers. So I was hoping, oh, there he is, my God. So Terrell, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that campaign, what it meant to you and what we got out of it.
Absolutely. Yes, I came in through the initial ballot initiative that Mike just mentioned.
the one where they got 18,000, that was question J to create the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And like, one of the weird things it was that even though like there was a reason for the trust fund, there was no money in it. So the next phase of that became, how do we actually get money into that campaign? One of the organizers of this event with United Workers actually was one of the people who actually door knocked me. And like I tell people all the time, rock, paper, scissors, I didn't win, but I actually joined the movement. So I guess I did. Basically, I was invited to a meeting and they were talking about what needed to be done now. And that's actually what won me over. Like, people actually talking about the issues that were personal to me and like coming up with a real plan on how we were actually going to work together to actually accomplish something meaningful. And so I was one of the people that was actually organized to go out and collect petition signatures. And so what we did in the very next year was we collected 20,000 petition signatures over the course of a summer. I came out of that campaign as well as Ms. Vern, who you've been hearing from the crowd. And we actually met each other through that campaign. And we took those signatures down to City Hall, the finance department, and demanded that they actually put the money into the trust fund. Unfortunately, we found out that they weren't going to do that. And so we were like, okay, let's put more pressure on them. We've recognized that one of the things that's true in Baltimore City is that if you can get something on the ballot, it is going to pass. So that's how question J got passed in 2016. 2017, we did the 20,000 petition signatures. 2018 was when we decided that we were going to do another ballot initiative. If they're not going to do their job, fine, we'll do it for you. And so we actually collected from that one 16,000 signatures. So altogether, that's 3 separate drives and about 50,000 signatures. So what actually wound up happening was like our city leaders, no, not gonna say any names, they literally took a bet on us on how we were gonna fare. And when they found out how many signatures we had, that we definitely, because we were doing all that work of like making sure those signatures were legitimate and things like that, because you have to get on the ballot, you need 10,000. And when we told them we absolutely did, that's when they finally decided they needed to actually get off their behinds and actually put the money into the trust fund. So they wound up passing actual legislation through city council and the mayor signing it, and we got 20 million into the trust fund. Yes.
The city called El Bluff. Yeah, we did. We only needed 10,000 signatures. The first time we ended up with over 18,000. The second time over 20,000. Now I like to think if we had to do it again, we might have got 30,000 the next time, right? But that's all done through organizing and people stepping up, right? And we have to do that at every opportunity that we have, whether it's at a pantry or at the bus stop. We have to continue to organize. So in 2020, something else important did. That pandemic, COVID-19, stepped in and stopped everything, right? So we was in a rough position. You know, on the one hand, there's this deadly virus sweeping the world. You know, the pandemic was global. On the other hand, because of it, people were hurting. People could not get to markets and get food, and you know they couldn't work, so they didn't have money to get. It was a mess, and it still is. We're still reeling from that, right? It's not like the pandemic went away. We just learned how to manage a little bit better. But during this time, we didn't know what to do, except we knew we had to take care of our people. So we went out to the people and provided food and masks and gloves and the things that people needed to, get by. We organized through that effort. It went from, look, we need to, I remember sitting in the room with staff and we were trying to figure it out. And it's like, the only thing we really know what to do is go and help feed people as best we can. Let's go do that. And as we were doing that, we began to bond with people, develop relationships with people. And through that, organize, So we did that. A lot of that was up Park Heights, several buildings in the Park Heights corridor, Northern Park Heights. And we also established a hotline, right, where people can call in and say, hey, I need toiletries, I need food, I need, the basic necessities. And we were able to get that to them. And we connected and worked very closely with Housing Our Neighbors to move homeless people from the streets and from the shelters, which they couldn't protect themselves if you're in the same room with a bunch of people. How do you protect yourself? So we was able to get them out of that situation into vacant hotels. So there was housing available or spaces available that was better than what the shelter conditions were. Our organizers also supported the Maryland Poor People's Campaign for helping train organizers to go out and continue to do the work, continue to organize, right? We did that through Project of Survival surveys. Many people here had signed or filled out those surveys, but I wanna just point something out. The surveys themselves is one thing. We need to know what people are dealing with. But that's again, another opportunity to organize people, right? This was a tool to get people's attention, to have time to sit and talk with somebody, right? And introduce them to this movement. So again, organizing, leadership development is in everything we do. Everything is a school, an opportunity. Next slide, please. Look at all those beautiful people. So now I'm going to pass the mic to Ashley. She's going to talk a little bit more about the Maryland Poor People's Campaign and the United Workers' relationship to that campaign.